already seen a lot of slides. Okay, we're here to discuss negotiations with investors. Looks like the subject has some interest for the audience. As you can guess, I'm the investor. I will be telling you how to trick me to give you some money. Or rather convince hope, because that's another fine line which we will be discussing between persuasion and manipulation. Okay, so there is a foundational rule which you need to remember when we go to negotiations, and it's a very simple one. So there's the principles of negotiation, they effectively work both ways. It's not like you have something for investors which is very sophisticated, something very simple for you, or vice versa. You play the same game by the same rules. If you know it well, you know it well. You play well. If you don't, then you don't. That's the only thing. And first question to the audience. What's your take when you start communicating with investors? At which stage?
Depends on the idea, depends on the project. But my understanding would be once you start monetizing, even if it's on a small scale, but that your concept and your product is already out there and starting to get traction. I think that would be the moment that you start communicating.
Okay.
As soon as possible. Because you want to build a relationship even before you go into details.
By the way, that's Chris Burrell, guys. If you want to know something about analyzing companies, you need to catch him before he runs away after the masterclass. Sorry, Chris.
No worries.
As fast as possible. Okay, when it's possible. I will here. And what does it mean here? It's not fast, it's location, not time. Okay, so not to spend too much time on that. Effectively, you start negotiating right when you define your value proposition. In which manner? You immediately identify the segment of investors you will be speaking with and what you will be speaking to those investors. If you try to speak with them when you already have monetization, it's a kind of a little bit too late, and you risk speaking with wrong people because you didn't filter them down before that. So as soon as you decide what you build, the process has started. If you want it or not, it doesn't take any thing of your will. And what would be the right communication process in that sense? That's again, that would be my take. It's not from a textbook, so it's open for discussion completely. But how you would define the communication process?
A two-way communication basically.
Yeah, I mean like in stages, like how it evolves.
Well, introduction, then getting to know the investor, what type of things do they work on and all that. Prepare your pitch accordingly to the type of investor that you're trying to talk to. Be concise, go to the point, don't go around things, like basically this is a proposition, X, Y, and Z, as clear as possible, so there's no gray areas or areas of misunderstanding. Yeah? And from there, naturally just go through the whole project, answer any questions that the investor needs, address any concerns that the investor needs, and basically, like you said at the beginning, it's a both ways. You need to understand what the investor is looking for, and they need to also understand what your vision is, and try to marry them and bring them into an efficient way that both sides can work and benefit from.
Yeah, quite elaborate answer, and effectively for me it's something similar, but it goes through your investment journey. So as we discussed, you start with your value proposition. Another big component of your communication process is storytelling, which is so often is forgotten, as we discussed with the UBS. So why storytelling is important? Why is not speaking about like logic or benefits of your product? Like many reasons for that. One of them you can see anytime you go to the pitch session here. You have like 1, 2, 3 minutes to pitch, 1, 2, 3 minutes to more questions, End of story. And there are like 10 startups in a row. You will be remembered in one case only if you told a compelling, interesting story. Nobody will write you a check, and I would say in the States, wire you the funds and then do it in Europe based on how you presented on stage. Even if it's stellar presentation, it's just a start. So you take about storytelling, and then you need to embed into the storytelling understanding of how people actually understand you, how they speak. There's what they call a system 1, system 2, also connected to like reptilian, mammal, and human brain. And it all starts with lowering down the guard. Because system 1, deeply connected to reptilian brain, evaluates you first. If you are a threat, in that case, financial threat. Before you eliminate that barrier, whatever you say on a logical level will fall on deaf ears. And that's a big part of storytelling of your job. If you get through that, then you go to merits. When you try to explain what your solution is, then the people ready to listen. Okay, you're not a threat. What did you bring? You tell them what you bring. Then, if you're lucky, you start negotiating. Because you cross both systems. Not a threat, something tangible. Okay, let's speak what we want here. And then you need to persuade them on fairness, meaning that the deal makes sense for both parties, that it's fair. And that's another thing, another big thing. Again, there's a big book about that by what the name it was a surname, don't remember the name now. You'll find it there, I can refer it to you. It's another very strong point, but yes is not valuable. Like, that's fair is valuable. So this is the message, but that's fair. And we see it many times, right? The people come and say, my valuation is 10 million. And we don't do that because it's not fair. That's it. Why it's not fair? Not a market standard. Or you like it's too much actually for what you ask, for whatever reason. We say it's not fair, end of story. We can go back and forth a little if you persist, and we still see it as not fair. What happens? System 1 triggers back. You are a threat. End of communication. Then only then negotiate agreement. That's more or less your process. You can define your own, you can do it like in a different way. Effectively, that will work more or less within this market. About the storytelling, there are many things. There is a golden thread technology where you kind of go through the loop, eliminating what doesn't belong. But that's more kind of a technological part, how to frame. Normally you start with a very old, not very old, like 100 years old trade pyramid, which is based on a very old, like ancient Greece playbook, how they kind of built all those plays, like the playwriting. And you go more or less like that. So you need to have an inciting incident in your story. As a startup, what's your inciting incident? How do you begin your communication? What should be in your pitch? Now we can getting closer to the pitch structure. What's
what
that?
issue you're trying to solve that comes from a story? Like basically, I think most of the people that start off with, they found an issue, a problem, and they, because of this situation, they came with the idea, oh, I should be able to try to fix this, and that's the beginning, that's the storytelling part.
In most cases, your customer A is your inciting incident, and you kind of build that moment, like, okay, like, feels right.
Yeah.
There is something to that. Next one in the pyramid is rise in action. And that's when you begin kind of trying to solve this pain. Like, how do we do it exactly? Finally, we have a climax, culminating moment. Okay, in your case, would be again pitch competition, whatever. Like when you brought everything together and came here to finally try to reach it, to get it. Then there is a falling action when you're falling. I think you succeeded. Okay, you're negotiating term sheets, shareholders agreement on some stuff, and finally the end. So that's what I was speaking about, how that would be met on your journey. money raised. And I'm telling you to write a script, but as you see there, it's for a season, not for a movie. Why so?
May I ask questions during your presentation?
Yeah, sure.
You have written first metrics and early adopters, but when you're talking to VC, mostly they already ask for very specific revenue, even if it's your pre-seed or seed round. So how do you navigate?
That goes here. Why season?
Because it's supposed to go enter into nature.
Great answer. You prepare a season. That's the season one, when you go from idea. Your VC journey would go the same way in season 3, let's say. You will have different stuff to show here. You will show them the revenue, you will show them the traction, you will show them the market size, but the journey will be exactly the same. You won't fool the Freytag pyramid on storytelling. You just need to put a different number. You with me? Effectively, that's how you build your roadmap, yes. But to be engaged, once again, you build it according to the playwright playbook. Otherwise, you become boring. You become boring, you go to system 2 before you clear system 1 once again. And you will be speaking, and not understanding, but nobody understands. Because you don't engage your audience. Again, speaking of VCs, can you imagine how many pitch decks they see every day? Can you imagine this job? You come to at 9 in the office, so it's like, see at home, open your computer, 9 a.m., and you know, like you read another 300 pitches arriving in your inbox, right? How to stand out with a story. Entertain them. No other way.
Now, that's a good question, because most of us, we have our pitch decks, but how do we, when you say you're sending it to the VC, there's no actual interaction with the person, you're just sending your pitch. How do you portray this storytelling within a pitch deck without making it too long or like, oh my god, I don't want to even read it, because storytelling it's a story. So how do you make it so it becomes like stands out in the way?
Visual, first of all, we are visual creatures. Again, based on research, we get about 10% information from what we see, what we read. 90% is visual. Make it visually appealing. Kind of put all the data that we collected there, but through hyperlinks, for example, or through addendum. Because if they want to dive deep, they need to do it easily with one click. They don't need to get. You need to think like them. Think about their journey, making that easy for them so they have a sympathy for you. Internally, system 1. Make it easy, make it compelling through visuals mostly. When you send it, you are expected to write more than when you present, for sure. But if you continue sending these boring documents, you are guaranteed for that to be thrown away. Like, that's a guarantee. You can send 10,000 pitches out there, not a single one will get a response.
Can I ask your opinion with regards to sending a one-pager versus an actual pitch deck, but it's a page pitch deck as a first conversation or as a first pitch?
That depends on the policy of whom you are sending them. They may request a pitch deck. You have to send a pitch deck. If it's a cold approach, the one-pager may be better. But it again should convey all the information to be a hook for them to ask for more. So that's about the persuasion. When I go to persuasion, we start with Aristotle again. We started with him, now we have Chavina, we like 3 things more, but you can work with Aristotle if you wish. It's still the same stuff. You need to persuade people in terms of reciprocity, again, going fast through rows. That's a very well-known fact, and you can recall many times like that. For example, somewhere somebody in the resort city come to you and give you a rose for free. Have that experience? No? No, just for you to give it to your girlfriend, not to you. Don't take me wrong.
Can you give me a gift?
Then, yes, because they try to explore it. But you give somebody something, there is an embedded social obligation to reciprocate. So that one you can explore, basically. Being committed to what you do, being consistent in what you do, that's what we preach all the time, nothing new. Social proof, that's the whole model of influencers is built on that sole principle. Social proving something, that it's good. Authority, that there is a person of authority who tells you something and you believe it. Liking, it's more about like, you know, member brings member. That's how this model works. When somebody gives it to you. Finally, scarcity, fear of missing out. All that stuff is built on scarcity principle. Like invest today, otherwise you are out of shares. And if you do it credibly, it's very powerful. One of my companies last year, they've been raising a 5 million VC round, and they had 4 term sheets from big VCs. Then you can play with scarcity principle all you want. Okay, you can like today, otherwise I'm going there. If you're bluffing, most probably will be caught. And you will destroy the truth. System one breaks, end of story. That's why ethical behavior is rewarded. Not an empty word. So a little bit more about how that works, what social influence has, what are cognitive biases and perceptions. And anchoring, we will speak more in negotiations about anchoring stuff. There are behavioral techniques. Foot in the door in the face, they are opposite, like it's either getting something small as a thought, like, and then ask for more, or conversely asking for something large, being rejected, and then on this reciprocity principle try to ask what you really wanted. That's what people also do. Again, novelty and emotion is the same story we speak about. It's about innovation now, yes, and emotion being engaged. It's powerful drivers. So what about ethical persuasion? Again, I'm not paid by anybody. I'm ethically persuading you to be ethical. But that's really a long-term positive gain. Because being ethical is profitable. And effectively why? So this is how it works. You should be transparent, respect personal autonomy, seek mutual benefit, and build credibility. As you can read as well as I do. And there is an ethical test, and a very simple one. If you answer those questions, I did this, and after a while, I still want to do this. Okay, you've been persuaded. Otherwise, you probably put a timeshare or something else, which you've been manipulated. Very efficient test to know what happened to the effectively. So, after we discuss that, how you would define what your pitch deck effectively is, rather than a collection of slides.
It's a way to convey the concept you want to get your attention.
Get my attention is right. But that's a
I think taking into consideration everything, ethical persuasion, and like Aristotle and all of this, I think try to give an impression of not only about your idea and what you're trying to pitch, but of who you are, what's the passion that you have on it, and that it's something that, like you said, an authority, that you're bringing it in as a matter of authority and passion for it as well.
Sure. But yeah, what I was saying, that it's a combination of 4 components. It's not a technical thing. It's obviously public speaking, it's storytelling, it's persuasion, and it's a beginning of negotiation. That's when we go to anchoring. I'll explain how you begin negotiation with the pitch. And the question, how do you treat this one? Who is
I'd like to know too.
who is wrong in that picture? Investors or startups?
Startup.
Why?
It's because you don't have the right story.
Okay, we need to speak with you.
Startups as well, I say, but also it's the first thing that we said. If they didn't, it's the startup side that also could be that the startup did not do the research correctly of who this investor is, and if this investor is the correct person to feature.
I have a little salacious story about that from last Web Summit. There is a kind of day zero when all the investors gather together before that. Don't remember the name, by the way, do you? Okay. Web Summit day zero. So we have also like round tables discussing one of the things like how can we kind of make startups apply to investors which makes sense to them. And the guy says, okay guys, I'm running like an LGBT solo founder fund. And I'm getting tons of applications. It's like there in the mission statement, like this. Tons of applications from everybody else. And I get my favorite like pastime is asking, who is like LGBT community in your founder system? Like, no one. Why you apply? And that effectively emphasizes the importance of doing your homework. Speaking only with people, it makes sense to speak with. Otherwise, it doesn't. That's one part of the story. You will reject, that's rejected. You won't come to that place. Here, it's 100% a startup problem. Why? Because to get to like the due diligence team, which will be diving deep, you need to convince you on everything before. You don't expect investors who speak with you to know your business as well as you do. That can happen, but that's not a strategy. 99% of cases you will speak with generalists who checks general stuff. And if you can't pass a 5-year-old test or a grandma test explaining what effectively you are doing, you are doomed to fail. And you will be in this situation. It's just your fault, nobody else's. And this is how to avoid it. Know whom to speak with and conveying your message clearly. Without technical lingo, without everything, be clear. Make certain people hear you. Finally, there is a game that you need to play. That's a part of game theory. So there are competitive and cooperative games, as you all know, I guess, and they are defined. I don't remember if I can. Yes. That's how they go in pairs. So when it's competitive, there is a competition. It's like choices are dependent. Cooperation, you have agreement. Next one, that's a zero-sum game. So you need to undercut another one. Here, you create value together. Here we have Nash equilibrium. No player gains something in that situation more. Here we have Pareto efficient outcome. Somebody has to get worse, the one gets better. And then finally it's a price wars through joint ventures. So which kind of game you prefer to play?
Sorry.
I'll move my cat out of the picture. Make it control that. Yeah, I can. Yeah, done? As age grade, I feel proud when people want to photo it so much. Please take your time. So what kind of game you want to play? And specifically with your investment. For sure. Again, in fact, like the greatest example of competitive games you can see now is like political. Same with President Donald J. Trump. And you can see how successful he is in doing that. So you can, from time to time, you will be playing competitive games. But you should aim for cooperative, especially being a startup in a weak position.
Can I ask something?
Of course.
Is there a difference between, because I mean, you can be cooperative with a startup, but then a lot of VCs are playing the competitive games. So how do you identify a little
No, they play competitive games with each other.
Okay.
First of all, that's a good game for you. If you can inside them to compete for you,
Okay.
that's a good game for you to play and see from behind. When they kind of try to press your valuation, you can define it as a competitive game, but normally it's not, because you're trying to build together eventually. If you feel you're being squeezed, which can happen, where we go back? We go back to ethics, system 1, and then you walk away. Because there are cases when investors try to do something harmful for you. You identify it, you walk away. Be prepared to walk away in negotiations is like, the tool number 1. Because it's very easy to convince yourself to stay. Okay, I consent a little bit, I give it a little bit more, and we'll speak about how it ends. So that's effectively what was the fair split as we discussed. That was an article in Forbes. I think you will be able to find it. It's 6-year-old already, but it's nicely grouped. That kind of stuff. They have 15 cars. Normally it's small, but in respect to Forbes, I decided to bring it in. And they're kind of grouped together here. But listening and understanding the other parties. Like this, like number 1 on my list here and there as well, if I remember right. Why is it important? Asking an obvious question.
Well, you won't be able to cooperate and listen to the other person.
Even competing is needed. Because when we go close to negotiations, we'll speak about the distinction between positions and interests. And when you meet each other, you trade positions first. Until you get what the interest is behind the position, you won't be able to move forward. It's impossible. Because you can speak about positions all day, nothing will move. Because you need to address what's really the issue. Again, being prepared, goes without saying. Being polite and cautious. It's effectively a very important thing, because you can get angry, you can get agitated. If you allow that to go, you would be in a startup, being in a weak position by default, not a very good setup. So the saying goes, like, be hard on the problem, soft on people. So kind of, okay, I understand what's happening here, I understand your position, yeah, but okay, let's try to kind of address it correctly. Understanding deal dynamics, very important why they are doing that. Again, one of the examples, for example, if you speak with a VC fund at the beginning of the investment cycle and at the end of the investment cycle, would be 2 very different conversations. If they have a lot of dry power left and they have a short window to deploy, they may be inclined to cut you some slack. At the beginning of the cycle, definitely not. So there's many things around it. There's just one example, but understand what's happening. Drafting first version of the agreement, not for you, that's Forbes side. You won't be able to draft it. Would be nice. Why? That's anchoring again. Going back to that. Play poker, walk away. Just like he said it again, you need to be able to stand up and walk away from the room if you feel that deal will not make sense. Not staying, wasting everybody's time. Negotiating, but continuously consider how that works. You go to the negotiation table. It's valuation is 10 million. They ask, can you do something better? You say, okay, 9. And better? Okay, for you, only like 8. So what's wrong with that? You didn't hear them saying anything back. You so far negotiating with yourself. Just conceding for nothing. That's how that works, and that's why it's dangerous. Fixating on deal address alternatives. That's the famous BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Coming with one option to the table puts you in a very big position of take it or leave it. That's why what I was saying about 4 term sheets for a company, that's what makes this very strong hand for that. Hanging up on one issue. Happen very often when people are kind of not professional negotiators. Imagine how that goes. You have a term sheet of 30 sections. You don't like section 3. And you're stuck on section 3. Smart thing to do would be, okay, let's leave it for later, let's go to section 4. Makes it like way easier to go. Again, obvious things, but a lot of deals crashed exactly because of it. So real decision maker, that's again an authority game. It's a different kind of authority game. When you negotiate with somebody for a long time, and you're certain that you get a deal. And they say, okay, now I need to go and speak with my boss. Coming back, I say, no, boss said no. Very well-known game, so you need to know from the very beginning if you are a deal maker, if you have a say, or you're just kind of, a voice of somebody else. Except in the first offer, like different cultures do it differently, always a wiggle room. So you always need to negotiate. You'll get a better deal if other party is interested. Also a filter. If they're not, you'll know pricing. Right questions? Well, that matter of attempt is again not for you. And finally, help of best advisors and lawyers, they're definitely not something to say on. Because you have asymmetry. Those guys like do it for living. You are doing that for the first time, maybe for a second. They know it better. Invite to your team somebody who do it for a living as well, to play for you. That's a quote from Sunzi. And effectively this is how it really goes in real life. Normally everything's kind of resolved before the first shot is fired or before you make the first statement. It's the Art of War, the famous one. And then about preparation. It's not preparing once, it's preparing continuously. Why? Because after each session you have new data coming in, you can't ignore it. And people do. I told there's a lot of obvious stuff on surface that comes from a lot of experience doing this stuff. Finally, we have 5 important considerations for the agreement. Like how you do it. We already have interests versus positions. Like we already kind of scratched up on that. Then you need to find options to satisfy those interests, whatever they may be. And then you need standards for resolving these issues fairly. Again, in terms of valuations, could be like valuation of similar companies like this year, if you have this data, or whatever. But third-party appeal is always powerful. Otherwise, it's just 2 people with opinion. It's very difficult to resolve without that thing in play. You need to have alternatives to this negotiation. And finally, you need to have proposals for agreement. Based on all that, you can finally come to a proposal. So, the on interest versus positions. Let me just move again. For the same reason. Reiterate real reason why they say what they say. In most cases, it's not. Think how to satisfy them without surrendering your interest. What you can move in your position is in your negotiation offer to make it happen without surrendering too much. Then structure the proposal. So what's the counterparty interest here? And if we speak about different kinds of investors, we can kind of identify, let's say, 4. We have angels, we have standard venture capitalists, we have private equity guys, we have corporate venture. Okay, we can think about more, but I guess like that's the 4 main ones which we will be dealing with. And they have quite different interests from time to time. So business angels need to find a target which they can invest and then exit hopefully to VCs or together with VCs. VCs need to identify and invest company with a 100 multiple. Do you know why they want to invest in such companies? Are they just greedy, or there's a reason behind it?
They invest a lot of startups. Some of the
A lot of startups will go bust. Yeah, they know that they will have like just 1 or 2 or 3 star performers, which have to pay for the whole portfolio. That's not their greed. That's why they select. So if you build a business which doesn't grow this way, VCs are not for you. Like, don't waste everybody's time. It could be a great business for a family office, for like wealthy individual.
But I do have a question with the 100 multiple.
Yeah.
This is what for a VC What's the time frame for this 100
10 years.
10 years.
No, it's again rule of thumb. They have 4 years to invest, 4 years to divest, 2 years of extension normally.
And in 10 years, it should be 100 times what it is.
This company should be 100 plus. Bet 1,000.
All better for everyone.
Yes. If we speak about private equity, that's a different game than that. Because they look for synergies with portfolio companies, so kind of. Mostly in startup world that would do that. Otherwise, what they do, they buy a company which is struggling and kind of turn it around. For startups, it's mostly to kind of complement with the portfolio that they have. Maybe not in your best interest again, but that's what they're doing. Finally, for CVCs, the danger is that you'll be focusing on product, not a company. And buying a company for a parent entity, and they're not interested in exiting or whatever, like much, and you are kind of stuck in that situation. So, no, that's why I'm speaking about intentions, because they kind of can be very detrimental to what you want to achieve. If you feel, let's say in CVC, that they want the technology, not exit, not making you a unicorn, you need to kind of work around it.
How often do they buy teams instead of technology? How often do they buy the teams?
Yeah, that's
for the team instead of technology.
what's the Aquahire. That's no, that could be interesting for you. Why not? If you just started building that, you do it for a year, and then you acquire some shares from the company, 3-year contract for permanent, so then it can go. Why not? Can be something, but you change the game.
Because what happens with the team? If I've got 100 people at that point, and
They-
you
they-
fire,
they
are you
will-
getting rid of
they
half
will-
of it?
Most probably, they will get rid of many of them. Yes.
100 times multiplier in 10 years. Is it something that you want to see in my deck? Or because normally you plan for 3 years, a maximum of 5 years. Let's say you put there 25.
We don't care about your business plans and projections, especially at early stage, for very specific reason. You don't have data, you have only assumptions. That's kind of useless. You need to see your potential. Like we are looking at that team, first and foremost. Again, guys may disagree in terms of like numbers. For me, it's about 60% the team, 20% the market, and 20% the go-to-market strategy. Kind of like that. But team goes first. If team is not right for the project, like whatever market is, it's a no-go.
Sorry, where is your family offices in here?
You can put them in many spots because they're very different. Family office can behave like private equity company, and mostly they do. Some of them have venture arm, and then as a venture arm, there will be kind of a more NLP kind of behavior still. So finally, we have these things which we discussed. Speaking about power and leverage, who has power and leverage, most probably not you, and you need to become prepared for that. The authority finding data supporting your position, most of people supporting your position. Target reservation price, BATNA and ZOPA, that we will be speaking now a little bit in more detail. For target and reservation price, it's again an easy thing, right? Target is what you want to get. Reservation is the minimum we want to achieve. What's the third one which is missing from the picture? Removing myself. I'm not transparent, I know. So what's the third one which is missing from the picture?
How much you will be sacrificed?
Target plus. Of course, we need to have negotiation margin. So for BATNA, it's best alternative to negotiated agreement. First of all, it's outside of negotiation. So all your concession stuff is not done. It's your negotiation position. BATNA is another DC, another angel, or just bootstrapping. It's also BATNA. Reservation price is kind of a little bit more than BATNA, normally because you need to account for the fact that to go to another one, you need to have other expenses, another due diligence, like legal fees, whatever. But for the simplicity, it's the same. If you have your first offer here at 5 and another offer at 4, so in this negotiation it could be like 4. Or you can take 3.9 to account for time and other costs you can have. But it's roughly this. That's another obvious statement. Better to have more than one button. Not disclosing that, because that feels hollow. And you need to be prepared to act on that. It's kind of your last resort. Saying, guys, if either we do this deal, or I'm going to the fund B and do the deal at this term. You can do it once, and that's make or break it, because normally that's the end of if they don't accept, you have to go. And finally, another one is zone of potential agreement. And that's effectively a very simple concept, especially graphic. That looks like just like that. It's a cross-section of targeted reservation price of yours and your counterparty. So if you have this zone, you can negotiate. If you don't have it, if you feel like I want 4, like I can give you 3 and you're stuck, you don't have ZOPA, and if nothing changes, you can stay here together. It most probably won't happen, but you need to find a way how to reframe negotiations to find it, or just leave it. Because if it's not on the table and you feel it's not on the table, use it.
So you should always have like a ZOPA already in mind before entering the negotiations to always have this potential of not
You have half of them. You have your target and reservation price. Between that, that's your part of it.
Yeah.
They come with their own. If they intersect, you're good. You can negotiate. If they don't, then we can.
You walk away or
You either, okay, if you feel, for example, that kind of, okay, my target price is 10, my reservation price is 8, for whatever reason. Yeah. And they tell you, okay, it's 7, otherwise we go. Then you have 2 options, like go with your partner, or like move the goalpost to 7.
yeah.
Then you have ZOPA activated, and you can make a deal. So that's one of my favorite documents, effectively how to plan for negotiation. The simplest document ever, but very powerful. So you identify, first of all, you do it for yourself. Okay, going. You need to know your position and your interest, because you will be declaring your position and negotiation, knowing why. You know your BATNA, your reservation price, your targets and goals, negotiation, your sources of power, your weaknesses. You list all that. That's a fact. Then you list your assumptions here for your counterpart. Then you come with this document for negotiation. And as we discussed before, that's a preparation. Then after the first round, you have data from the other party. And you amend it. And it goes like that until you either reach an agreement or break negotiations. That's effectively the tool for you to be always prepared properly to what's happening there. And finally, the non-customer feedback. And in that case, it's like, maybe you don't have a customer, but the concept is the same. Okay, the negotiations fail. And in your case, like 95, 97% of negotiations will fail. My favorite example is one of my startups they've been raising around, and they spoke finally with 150 PCs, got investment from 2. So that's kind of your success rate. So what we should take away from this negotiation? You need to adjust your deal to market if it's not adjusted. And finally, make it a better offer for the next negotiations. And this one, I'm always saying the same thing. It's not the same story. You need to persevere. You don't need to be stubborn. Persevering, meaning like going where you want to go, listening to the world. So kind of changing your way. Stubbornness is just continue doing what you are doing, whatever happens. And stubborn people normally fail. Persevere people normally succeed. So this is the final message which I want you to leave with. That everything changes around. And when you prepare for negotiation, prepare for your business. Okay, imagine, like you have everything ideal, like really ideal, 100%. What happens the next minute with your ideal situation? No, I mean like around you. What happens with your business?
You believe that anything can happen.
Yes, because they don't account for the first dimension of time. Because time moves and everything moves around you. And what was ideal is not ideal anymore.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the world we live in, and we forget about it. You kind of hit something, and you say, okay, we achieved it. We achieved it at this moment. We need to continue achieving it. Because change is here. So leaving you with that powerful thought of not mine. And if you have questions, happy to answer.
Yeah.